This is the Literary License Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
This circus is like a mirror. You see yourself in it sometimes. I wouldn't care to trade with you.
Maybe not. But the point is, my scaly friend, that you are in a cage, while I'm free to walk about.
Oh, you have your cage, too. You test your bars just as often as I test mine, kiddo. The creator who made you cunning made my eyes efficient enough to perceive objects without aid. In fact, the Lord of all living dealt with me quite generously. Strength he gave me, and symmetry, and endurance, and patience. But look at you. You even have to hang rags on yourself to protect your weak skin. You have to hang things in front of your eyes in order to see. Look at yourself.
All right, you naughty man. You see, what I really want to know is, when shall I be married again?
Never.
Well, what sort of man will come into my life? Let's put it that way.
There will be no more men in your life.
Really? Really? Read my future.
Tomorrow will be like today. And the day after tomorrow will be like the day before yesterday. I see your remaining days as a tedious collection of hours full of useless vanities.
You're a mean, ugly man.
Mirrors are often ugly and mean. When you die, you will be buried and forgotten. And that is all. You might just as well never have lived at all. I'm sorry, but you see, it is my curse to tell the absolute truth.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast. Today we have with us Vicky Ray.
Hi.
John Wilson.
Hello, folks.
And today we have a special guest co-host with us, Tristan Drew Rogers. He's a photographer, director, and author of Brothers of Blood, which will be out in July 2017 from Black Rose Publishing. Hello, Tristan.
Howdy. How y'all doing?
Hi, Tristan.
Welcome for joining us.
Read your manuscript. Loved
Thank
it.
you very much.
Now, before we get started, I thought what we like to do is to give a little bit of personal touch into our podcast. So before we get started in our conversation about the Circus of Dr. Lao and the film The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, I thought we'd do something a bit personal and ask ourselves our monthly question, which is, to each of us, which fantasy character would you most like to meet and why? Starting with you, Vicky.
Which character I like to meet and why?
Fantasy character.
Okay, you're talking like fantasy, probably Xena, Warrior Princess, because I like badass women.
Hell yeah.
Everybody's ass. I love Xena, Warrior Princess. Watch it all the time. Love Lucy Lawless. Watch her in anything she's in.
And what about yourself, Tristan?
I actually thought long and hard about this. I didn't think I was going to have to, but it's a really tough question. So I ended up only ending on two characters because I could not decide between the two. So popular-wise, I wanted to choose Tyrion Lannister because I probably have good wine, good conversation, and then Sherlock Holmes because I could finally, for once, have somebody help me find my keys. So one of those Would probably be the best.
That's amazing.
Enjoyed.
What about yourself, John?
I'm gonna have to say I'm in close to Vicky. I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan, so I would love to fictionalize Wonder Woman, but Linda Carter or Gal. I mean, I just think, Wonder Woman is amazing. Linda Carter, by the way, just got her star on Hollywood, so
she was pretty
wow.
good. The new one was pretty badass. I was really surprised.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, Linda Carter looks amazing. She just looks amazing.
She still does. The woman does not age. She does not. She just looks fabulous, though.
The only question I would have for Wonder Woman from the 80s TV series, or Linda Carter herself, would be, when you're running, how the hell did you keep your tits in that outfit?
No kidding. They must have had duct tape on her boobs.
That's really a magical bustier, I'm telling you.
I know.
Well, you know what? Because they sell wrist tape. Because my daughter uses it for she cocktails downtown Dallas, or uptown, I should say. And she has to tape her boobs. I mean, it's called breast tape. That's what they use.
Yeah, you have to
pick up and
tape it on the sides. Yeah,
it's painful taking off. I knew that. So,
well, what fantasy character I would like to meet? Well, I've been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Origins, and I think I'd want to meet a Sphinx. And actually reading, Dr. Lau, I've actually quite liked the Sphinx. The
Sphinx was a herm, though, wasn't it?
It's a hermaphrodite, yes.
Yeah, hermaphrodite, yeah.
Which I didn't know that at all. It's very interesting.
I know. So, I mean, if you go tell it the fuck itself, it actually could.
It could, yeah. I think everybody would fuck themselves.
First it would say, in order for me to do that, answer this riddle.
This is why we got an R rating.
Yeah.
Well, now we're getting to the forming the plot segment of our podcast, and we're going to be talking about The Circus of Dr. Lau by Charles G. Finney. Now, it's quite interesting that Charles G. Finney actually wrote this while he was in the Army, when he was stationed in China in 1929. But the book didn't get released until in the 40s, right after the war. So he actually sat on this. Now, the interesting thing about the Circus of Dr. Lau, it is the precursor and probably the grandfather of modern fantasy. Before that, fantasy was all kind of Lord of the Rings kind of fantasy, where it's, distant lands, where he actually took fantasy and set it into real life terms. And because of the Circus of Dr. Lau, we now have works by Ray Bradbury, who's a huge fan. He wrote Something Wicked This Way Comes as an ode to the Circus of Dr. Lau. And then we also have things like The Last Unicorn that came out in 1966 by Beegler, Chaotic City, and other works like that. And The Circus of Dr. Lau, which is also quite interesting, is mandatory reading in Spain.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, it was really quite lascivious, I thought, for, back. I'm just really surprised when we find these books and reread them, like how, just wow, he really snuck some stuff into that book, especially with the Seder and all that, know.
Now, one of the reasons why we're covering The Circus of Dr. Lau is that when I was growing up, there was 4 movies that my mom would let me stay up and watch. And if they were on TV, they were always on late at night. I didn't have to go to school the next day. And the Seven Faces of Dr. Lau was one of those. Then about 4 years ago, I decided to found the book, hunted down the book and read it, and became even a bigger fan. So hence is the reason why we're covering this. So, Vicky, what's your thoughts about The Circus of Dr. Lau?
Well, it's supposed to be Dr. Lowe in my research, so I don't know, Lau or Lowe. But he looked like that he had a lot of, he went to China, and I think that's where he got a lot of his input from, because it was a fun book. It really was. I was shocked at, all the innuendos and things that, for a book of its time to had in there, like I said, the Seder, and then you got, the Medusa, and it has all that stuff that I like reading about, because I don't know if you remember in high school, but I think we went to the same high school for a while, me and Keith did, but I don't think this was required reading in IHC, but it was really well done, because he really did incorporate a lot of fantasy, and I could see where that would send more authors into that realm of writing. It was actually quite thought-provoking for the time, and I think it kind of, right, it did set fantasy on a pedestal for a change and made it more interesting. It was a really good book. I loved it.
And what about yourself, Tristan? Any opening thoughts before we delve into the Circus of Dr. Lao?
Absolutely. When I first started reading the book, now remember I'm a millennial, I'm younger, so I have a different viewpoint on certain things. So when I began the book, I was like, this is wildly racist. It was my beginning thoughts. I was cringing. I was like, oh damn. But then as I went further into it and continued to read it, I saw that the characters in which I thought were being racially objectified actually have a quiet dignity about themselves, and the actual townspeople seem to be the more horrific circus of the bunch within the book itself. And I thought that was really interesting with the metaphor that continues in the book with the mirror and seeing one's own reflection and stuff like that. So it's crazy how inventive and intelligent and informative the book is, while at the same time being a caricature. I really enjoyed it. This is the first time I'm ever even hearing about it, so I'm really glad to have been able to read it, to be honest.
What about yourself, John?
It's funny that this was required reading there for here in the U.S. I don't know if I can't speak for Keith or Vicky. It reminded me of Homer's The Odyssey or the Iliad, which was required reading, and that was one of the things where I wasn't much of a Romeo and Juliet Shakespeare type person, but when we started reading that, the Iliad, it just changed my perspective on what writing could be and characters could be. So this story definitely made me think about that and think about just that mythological pathos, which I'm very much drawn to. So.
And to get ourselves even further into the Circus of Dr. Lao, why don't you give us a brief synopsis of the book?
Sure. The Albany? Yeah, Albany, Arizona is a sleepy Southwest town whose chief concerns are boredom and surviving the Great Depression. That is, until the Circus of Dr. Lao arrives and immensely and irrevocably changes the lives of everyone drawn to its tents.
So to get us into the discussion of the Circus of Dr. Lao, Tristan, why don't you start us off?
Okay, well, first off, is it Dr. Lao, Dr. Lao? The film was all over the place with that one, so it's very confusing hearing different ways to pronounce it.
I agree, because I was in my mind calling it Dr. Lao, but then in the movie he says Lo, but then Dr. Lo, he obviously goes from speaking very thick Chinese accent to American accent to Brooklyn accent to...
Tony Randall.
He says his name one way and then another. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, even in the book, it does sit there and say that he would pronounce his name from Lao to Lo to Lao to Lo, depending on who he's speaking to. So I think we can actually go one or the other. Because I mean,
I didn't catch that.
And when Charles Finney wrote the book, he did it because he wanted to show what small town racism was.
Oh, which he nailed it. Like he nailed it. Like so well. The racism in the book, like at the beginning I thought this is the narrator, he's speaking his mind in racial terms, but I started noticing no, it's not. It's the narrator's matter of factly stating this is a Chinaman, this is a Mexican, in those terms. But as you read, you start noticing that the characters are the ones that really go into the real gritty behavior of the racism with it all, even when it comes to their own friends, or whoever else are part of the town that they know. I love the way that they approach that, or that he approached that. And then with the covers as well, I can't pronounce the last name, but Boris Artsibashev. I tried my best. Yeah, the art really does help. Is that right? Because that's an awesome name. I wish I had it. But the artwork itself really does a beautiful contrast to the storytelling. It almost brings you into a different world, which I also thought the film did a pretty decent job trying to approach that in a similar sense.
I mean, the thing is that what I've quite found interesting about the Circus of Dr. Lao, that it's basically 2 days in the life of this town where their circus comes. Mm-hmm. You don't know anything about these people beforehand. And outside the epilogue that we'll probably get to later, you find out what happened to them as an afterthought. But you basically have these 2 days. So it's basically, and I always found like with the racism is that it's the townspeople to say the racism, but when you get into the characters within inside the Dr. Lao's character outside the snake, which the snake is supposed to be pretty cunning, and he's not very happy to be there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But the townspeople are not very enlightened people at all, and they have like these very narrow views of everything. But I think it's like when I think they saw the Sphinx, and they're all coming in to look at the Sphinx, and then they leave, and the Sphinx goes, how many more weird characters can you bring through here to Dr. Lau? I mean, I'm not paraphrasing here. Well, I am very paraphrasing there because it was written a lot more eloquently than what I just put it. But
I'm trying to find that passage and I can't.
But it's quite interesting because none of the characters who are worldly, which the Dr. Lau's cast of characters in the circus themselves are very worldly, and they look at the townspeople like they're just very narrow-minded. And I thought it was very interesting with the racism that the people that were very worldly weren't racist because they had a very outstanding world view on things, where the people in the small town were the racists because they're very narrow-minded. And I thought that was quite a interesting way to offset, the terms were being used in this book.
He interjected a lot of paganism in this book too.
Yeah.
I mean, this was like ritual sacrifice and things like that. And Glover trying to stop and no, don't kill her. I mean, kind of up my alley. I like that shit.
It's funny though too, like at the beginning of the book,
I'm always into human sacrifice.
It's funny on the beginning of the book, it is like the town seeing the circus come through and how none of them can quite agree upon what they're seeing. So it shows you how narrow their minds are. It's like, a lot of their terms was with the bear and the Russian, right? It's a bear. No, it's a Russian. No, it's a Russian. It's a bear. And it's sort of their narrow-mindedness and not being really open to what they're seeing in front of them. And I like, one of the things about the book, which usually makes me cringe when you introduce so many characters all at once and they're kind of thrown at you, is not going so deeply into the character descriptions, their backstory. They kind of let the scene paint it, the descriptions of them or their character or their personalities. And there's a lot of times when Dr. Lau was using the method of, now here is this character, and the way it was introduced throughout the entire book, it was done so eloquently, as opposed to let's go into Sphinx and where a Sphinx comes from, and like he very eloquently painted the story of that Sphinx and what it, how it came into his life. And it was done in such an eloquent way that usually when I read a story like this, it goes too deeply into the character description that I just don't really care. I cared about each and every single one of the characters, even the ones who are the racist, crazy, people there, because it was done so eloquently.
And they kind of like reflected like the characters. Well, actually, the fantasy characters were far more well behaved, and they weren't near as racist and divisive as the animals themselves, because there were so many of them. And I was lucky enough to find a book that's disintegrated by the time I ordered it, and it explained all the characters in it. And it just goes into all, just how much the characters, they all saw something different when they went through this. And I think sometimes it reflected some of their bad behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
When especially with the Sphinx.
I think what Finney did very, very well is that people become, especially in modern times, and this basically started around the Depression time, that people became to be justified by their careers, and their careers would actually form their personality. And I think what Finney does with the townspeople is that each one has a career, no matter what it is, whether it's housewife or station master or something like this. And he lets that paint the picture of who this person is inside your mind, as far as, you don't have any looks about, is this person face lined, is this person this or that or anything like that. But as you read it, because of what he does give you, you just paint up your own mind and your own imagination and what these people
make up your own mind.
And he has a spot on with very few. He doesn't overwrite, which, if you look at a lot of authors, which, if you look at Henry James, which was like 20 years before this, who very much overwritten, where he doesn't overwrite anything, but yet he gives you enough information to carry you through to each character. And you can see each character, even the ones that are only mentioned like in one paragraph, you see them. You might never see them again, but he does mention them.
Yeah.
Well, to actually piggyback on what y'all had said, like I have this certain passage in the book. It's only 16 pages in when you're getting introduced to all the characters. And I just want to read this real quick. A traffic officer, so there's the job, of the road read the ad at 7:30. Cannibals might have eaten him. Shipwrecked mariners never. An undiscerning woman might have loved him. A cinema queen never. He wasn't a very good traffic officer. He might have made a failure of the insurance business. Heaven perhaps could comfort him. This world never. His 2 sons sometimes would wonder how his hands would look in handcuffs, his feet in ballet slippers. And that's just an introduction to that, man.
Yeah.
That's just beautiful how you wrote that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you quite a view of that gentleman's life. He didn't leave nothing out on him, especially when he didn't leave nothing out on any of the characters.
Absolutely.
Even the family were really well written.
Mm-hmm.
And even the relationships within that family, it's like, you can tell like when they'll just have one line and you can tell that the parents have had enough of the kids go off or whatever. I mean, it's amazing that Charles Finney is like a footnote nowadays, considering that, I've never read anything else that he's written. But I would like to, but it's very hard to find any of his stuff now. Most of it's not even published anymore, which is quite a shame. So, but I think the circus, it's one of those books, and I actually was quite surprised when my other half, Isaac, is Spanish, and he goes, I was mentioning, I go, the Circus of Dr. Lau, and he's like, oh, and I go, it's very big in Spain, and I told him the Spanish title of it, and he goes, oh, yeah, we read that. He goes, we have discussion groups in school about that, and he goes, we discussed it for about 3 weeks, this book. I was like, really?
Wow.
Wow. Well, there's just a lot to discuss. It's to me, it's like you get these little moments in each time they move along, the characters move along and they meet the mythological characters. It's sort of like you're getting a brief history about the mythological character, but then you're getting the interaction between the person, because this, for the town, this isn't an escape from their normal humdrum lives, and they are wanting to see something to wow them, but majority of them are really skeptic, right? Even if they see something in front of them, they can't believe what they're seeing in front of them. And they're like, yeah, well, but then as you get some characters who engage with the mythological creatures, it's basically showing their character. I can't remember the character's name, but the one that gets her fortune read, and how she just gets smacked down.
I think they refer to her as the fat blonde in here. I don't know, or something like that.
She just gets smacked down in a way that it's like you feel bad for her, but then you're like, but she, at the end, she just is kind of, when I forget who she meets up with afterwards, she just says, oh yeah, I'm getting a lot of money and I'm going to meet so-and-so. And she's so delusional that she just didn't even listen to this person who pretty much summed it up. Like, you're going to do the same thing you did day after day. You're never going to think anything new. You're never going to, it's so well done and memorable,
I also think
the Medusa too. The Medusa lady didn't want to believe that, the Medusa, so she had to go in. They didn't even seem upset that this woman turned to stone in front of them. If I saw somebody turn to stone in front of me, I think I'd be wondering what the fuck, But no one seemed upset about it.
Well, again, that just shows you how they probably didn't believe it.
Yeah,
like, okay, that's
right
just
there.
It's part of the show or something.
Well described in the book.
Well, I thought
but she deserved it. She pulled her head over and says, "Hussy."
Yeah,
she deserved it.
Blaze and hussy. But the Lush. I think he's also basically telling the reader at the same time was like, I think from what I picked up from the book is this is someone who's probably gotten by her looks. She probably was the townsperson like that. And she never worked on her personality, and she basically, it's always about her looks. But then, of course, that fades, and now she's just left, basically like an aging old, Gloria Swanson falling apart beauty queen sort of thing. But in her mind, she's still that youthful beauty that she can still allure people, but she's never going to. And then, but it kind of works on two different levels, because in one level you do look at it, it's like, this is the truth. But then you think, what happens if someone like that who's so delusional actually does face reality? What happens to people when they face reality?
But none of them did really. Except maybe the what was her name? She's the one that met up with the satyr, and kind of messed with her. Someone came in though really quick before the damage could be done. So,
but it wakened her inner. Yeah,
it did. It wakened her all right. Broke into a cold sweat.
I mean, this book won tons of awards. I mean, in 1935 when it came out, and
it won the inaugural National Book Awards in the most original book of 1935.
I mean, what I also liked about it, if you happen to get, I just ordered the hardback of it. I found a hardback of it. It actually has the original illustrations in it, and
I didn't.
The illustrations are beautiful. We put them up on our website if you want to have a look at them, but they are phenomenal.
I didn't see that one when I was looking for it on Amazon. What a shame. I'll have to buy it now because it's such an intriguing book.
Yeah, mine had illustrations, which I also appreciate. I like that novels do that sometimes, because it pulls you out just for a brief minute, just to give you a visualization of what's going on in the scenes, and very few authors do that. So I think it's like something that I deeply appreciate.
Yeah.
There are a couple scenes in the book that I really like. I like the werewolf sequence.
Yeah.
Where they're like hoping that she's going to be this sexy werewolf-woman, and she's just like this old.
Yeah. Well, and they even talk about that. I mean, they bring that up from the beginning of the Peep Show, right? It's only for the men, and only, they can be the ones who see the Peep Show, and
the lycanthrope.
Yeah.
Wasn't all that cracked up to be, I guess.
Yeah, the geriatric.
Geriatric. I know, I've never read about a geriatric werewolf. Every time I think werewolf, I'm thinking American Werewolf and London Werewolf,
I mean, another thing I found quite interesting is I'm not sure if all the different species are very happy to be, or are very healthy in Dr. Lau's circus as far as the book is concerned. I mean, isn't the chimera, isn't like his feathers, his fur's bit molted. It
captures everything and doesn't let it go. It's in captivity, basically.
Well,
it doesn't really explain why they stay. I couldn't figure out why they stay. I didn't find them in the book.
Well, it's funny because even Dr. Lau explains like the deworming process of I was like, oh, and the scenes.
Right.
Like, God, TMI, dude, TMI.
Well, even like the sea serpent, like getting his rocks off. He like go miles and miles and miles and see this girl and then have sex with it and then go off. And then he gets caught. And the only reason he gets caught because his libido gets him caught because of the mermaid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
With her green hair.
I thought it was really precious about that whole story when it comes to the libido and all that. The fact that he wanted to just free the mermaid and didn't have any sexual undertones with that. I was like, that's pretty precious of him. He just wants to free the beauty.
Yeah.
Well, what about the nymphs? He talks about here, he goes, the nymphs lay about on gray rocks. Fat, young nymphs with stomachs like water women's hips and hips like horses. Now, what kind of picture is that? Pink and white.
One you won't forget.
Well, they're fat. He calls them fat young nymphs. I mean, he's so descriptive and just so mean. It's an ornery book. It really is.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh my God, there's so much sexism in here too. It's like, I know Tristan was talking about the racist part, but my God, the sexist part was just,
oh yeah, the sexism's all over the place. For real.
And it was 1935. It's like, how do these people, like, it was probably like kiddie porn for people back then to read it.
I imagine it's probably one of those books that like New York City and all the major cities critics thought, oh, this is fantastic. But then when you got to like, bumfuck Egypt, kind of little shitty little towns, they're probably thinking, oh my God, we can't have this out. We need to ban this.
Sacrilegious. Burn them all. Burn the books.
They didn't ban this book, did they? I didn't see that anywhere.
Yeah, was there any pushback for this book at all? Because I could see how it could have gotten some?
No, it didn't actually. It was a huge bestseller. It sold very, very well, and it was very, very well respected. I think that in 1935 was the beginning of people starting to go to university as well around that time. Right after the Depression's just about to, Depression's very much in the fore at that time. But at that time, people started looking at education and stuff like this. And I believe this book was picked up and was discussed a lot in universities during that time period. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, as far as the Buckle, the Bible Belt, and all those other areas go, I'm not quite sure, because normally with things like this, you only get what the main cities and the main populace thought of it, but you don't. It's really hard to find a lot of information about this book beyond the accolades that it received.
There isn't a whole lot of information on it, because I like to research every time, when we come up with these books. And there wasn't really a whole lot on the author or his book, except that it did win those awards. And it seemed like it was just something you won awards, but they kind of kept it on the back shelf or something. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on it. There was stuff, but it was repetitive.
I mean, it's still being published, so obviously there's still an audience for it. People must still be buying it. So.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the people are a lot more open-minded now about stuff like this. It's nice. He said, Kirsten said he's a millennial, and they never, probably had to read things like we had to read, especially me and Keith.
Well, I think it's interesting too that, like, if you look at this, one modern take of something similar to this would be like American Horror Story when they did the whole circus scene. It's oh
my god,
the freaks are not the bad ones. It's actually the people and how they treat.
Oh, I know. That was the weirdest, most fucked up American Horror Story ever was the circus. I mean, it was like. It was just so, I mean, it went to levels I never thought possible, especially with Doogie Howser.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the twins.
Yeah. Betty.
Yeah.
But I think,
that was just morbidly fascinating.
Well, the American Horror Stories Carnival season basically is a nod back to Todd Browning's The Freaks.
Yeah,
which Freaks came out a couple years after this book came out at the same time, which ruined Todd Browning's career. That movie, even though now it's looked at as one of the best black and white films ever made.
Wow!
But I think it's a bit like seeing people with genetic deficits and defects, and seeing it in the flesh for the very first time in moving pictures is probably caused a lot of people to run out in horror and scream, and people fainting in the aisles and that sort of stuff. I mean, I think, I guess it would be quite strange to see a man with no arms and no legs rolling a cigarette with his mouth, and the things that does happen within Freaks show. But again, that's another show where basically the freaks are the normal ones. It's the normal people that are the villains and the hideousness.
Oh, they're terrible.
Yeah.
And in this case, what you get here outside this snake character. I mean, all the characters in Dr. Lau's circus are quite, full of morality and quite virtuous. And it's the townspeople who hold themselves as moral and virtue who are not really that virtuous.
I don't know about the sea serpent.
Yeah, they don't follow through, basically, their virtue.
I don't know. There was a couple of the horny mythological creatures in there, so I don't know.
Well, what did you make out of the virgin sacrificing ritual?
At the end of it, where the guys go, "No, don't do it, don't do it." I wasn't expecting that, actually. I was really kind of surprised how he snuck in the pagan stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely took me off. I was like, "Oh, where are we going here?"
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, now we're going to have a virgin sacrifice. It's like, and it's like, how do you find a virgin anymore? I guess back then there was a couple.
there was more. They're like,
while I was reading that, I just kept saying, "Damn." I was like, "Damn," as it was going on. It was just crazy.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
It's quite funny where they go, like, they go, would you sacrifice it? Because they're crying and bellowing on about because they want rain and they want this and they want this, but they're not willing to do anything for it. And they go, well, we need a virgin.
Yeah.
And they start looking around the room. It's like, well, that lets out the older generation. Okay.
Yeah. Everybody over 40, just move aside.
Yeah.
And then the guy who was protesting the most ended up being his daughter, didn't it? So it's kind
right.
of
Yeah.
But I think it's, it does give way to that people who want something and are not willing to do anything for it. Wanting, I think it kind of shows that aspect of the human condition, that sometimes you have to, it's a bit like if you look at world terms today and, and people want to get ahead of their careers. Sometimes you have to sacrifice something of yourself to get where you want to go at times. And that's what life's about.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that's actually a big theme within the movie too, that they actually, convey thread throughout the entire movie because it, which we'll talk more about, but I just feel like in this, once they bring that upon, you're like, oh, well, now you're really clearly showing that this is a book of some point of sacrifice for a person to be like, how much do you want to be entertained, right? Like,
right. I know, got a little out of hand.
Yeah. Not part of the show, folks. Not part of the show.
So, Vicky, do you have any last thoughts about the book, The Circus of Dr. Lao?
I would suggest it to anybody because it translates well and right into our decade as well. I think it even translates more into our decade now with everything that goes on, especially with the sexism and the racism and everything. And it's just a fascinating book. It's not a hard read. I couldn't stop reading it once I found my glasses. But it was well done, like y'all said. The characters, it wasn't overwritten, and there's nothing worse than reading something that's overwritten. So,
great.
But it keeps your interest, and I think that anybody can sit down and read it because it's just a fascinating read.
And what about yourself, John? What are your final thoughts of the book?
Yeah, I deeply appreciated the book. It definitely, like I said, reminded me of the Odyssey and the Iliad, which I was obsessed with as a kid. It is a very easy read. So for those of you, it's like 134 pages. But at the end of it, actually, there is a character sort of analysis, a catalog of the characters. So
right.
Because they introduce so many characters throughout the book,
there's so many.
You can go back and look at them. Yeah. And the illustrations, like I said, are great breakers to be able to kind of pull you out of the story and visualize and then put yourself right back into it. But yeah, I really appreciate it.
I'm going to have to buy that version. You guys are going to have to send me that link.
Yeah.
Will do. And what about yourself, Tristan? What are your final thoughts on the book, The Circus of Dr. Lao?
Well, I'd tell anyone that is kind of in a reading slump, whether that means they haven't been reading for a while or they just keep reading the same type of stories. This is a still original novel, or I guess long like novella, but you're going to be surprised. It is an easy read, like everyone's been saying, and I honestly was really confused and looking forward to seeing how that would translate to a film. So I just would suggest it to anybody that wants to read something different.
And myself, I would sit there and say that I would highly recommend the book. If you're familiar with the film, which we'll be discussing after the commercial break, that the book is set in a more modern time period than the movie is, which we'll get into later. And I think that the funny thing about it is it's set in a time, but at the same time, people haven't really changed that much as far as their views are concerned. And I think it does open your mind at looking at society as a whole and holding a mirror up to yourself and being able to reflect on yourself. And so I highly recommend this to Dr. Lao. So that leads us to our commercial break. When we come back, we'll have a special interview with our special guest star, Tristan Drew Rogers, and we'll be discussing his new book, Blood of Brothers, which will be out in July 27, 2018. Almost slipped there. And Black Rose Publishing. So please stay tuned after the commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Let's play a game. I will ask you yes or no questions. Ready? Do you have a rocking chair to relax on? Do you have space to store your toddler's toys if an unexpected guest came over? Can you lay down comfortably on your couch? If your answer is no to one or more of these questions, then you need the new IKEA catalog. Visit IKEA at Cairo Festival City and get your free copy. Enjoy 1,000 new ideas and more than 2,000 new lower prices. IKEA 2018 catalog. Make room for life.
Welcome back. As I said before, we got our special guest co-host, which is Christian Jew Rogers, going to be talking to us today about his book and his career. And our first question to you today, Tristan, is you work as a director, filmmaker, photographer, and writer. Which of these do you find the most mind-fulfilling?
I mean, in all honesty, I started off as a writer. I will probably die as a writer if everything goes according to plan. So I would say writing in general. Filmmaking, I'm very modest. That's nice of you to say, but I've done like a few short films here and there. One full-length documentary. Yeah, I tried. I went to film school for 2 weeks, realized I couldn't afford it, and then I just like, shit, I'm just gonna get a camera and figure this out. So, but you have to. Yeah, you can. It's a lot easier nowadays. If it was like 30 years ago, it might have been far more difficult. And I wouldn't have been alive, so it just depends. But writing is my go-to. No matter what you do, whether it's filmmaking, music videos, any other type of art, you need to have a blueprint of what you're doing and what to follow. You can always go off on a little tangent in some other direction, but at some point it's just going to become masturbatory without a plan. So writing it is.
Your YouTube channel explores your life experiences through the medium of film. Where do you come up with your ideas, Tristan?
Well, when I first started doing the YouTube thing, I just filmed my family and stuff like that, and then blogs about filmmaking. Then as it got, further into it, I started meeting people. I started doing that in Nevada, and I met this rapper friend of mine. We used to work at this chocolate factory together, and I met another rapper there, and I would just ask him, hey, you guys want to do a music video free of charge? And like, I'll let you guys have final cut because it's your art, it's your image. So like, cool. And I just started doing that. So in all honesty, my ideas were just say yes to everybody else's ideas and try to turn it into your own. At that point, I was more of a producer than an actual writer because I was just trying to experiment with the camera. I had no idea how to use it. So I was like, let's break this thing. Let's do it.
Speaking of which, you work in many different types of mediums in photography. Is there one in particular that you prefer the most?
I've done film and also more so digital when it comes to photography. But at the same time, I'm open to anything. I don't care if it's a camera obscura. Like, I'm willing to just give it a shot and try everything else out. I would prefer to eventually move away from doing like weddings and stuff like that. I actually do more concept photography. But at this point, I'm just enjoying the ride. So I don't have a favorite right now.
Nice.
What started you in writing, and how do you find working in this field?
What was that? I didn't hear that one.
What started you writing, and how do you find working in this field as a writer? Because it is challenging, and it's very competitive, as we all know.
Absolutely. I mean, if it wasn't for y'all, I don't even know where I'd be right now when it comes to publishing. I mean, I wrote Brothers of Blood maybe 6 years ago. And it's just now getting published today, or excuse me, in July.
I read your manuscript. It was very good.
You liked it? Thank you.
Yes, I did.
I really appreciate that. You're probably one of 5 people who've read it, so I truly do appreciate you, and I love you, Vicky.
Yeah, no, Thank you so much. You too. I had to read it. I can't send out stuff. I don't read it, so. But it was very good.
I'm humbled by that. Like, I'm so honored. I don't even know what to say.
Just do good.
Yeah, what was your inspiration behind Brothers of Blood?
Well, I know it's a terrible, not terrible in the sense that it's bad, I hope, but terrible in the sense of the concept of it, young people wanting to kill freely. But I was inspired by my real life. As a kid, I was crazy nervous all the time. I doubted everything, and I lived in Illinois at this time. I'm from everywhere in the States, and it was pretty much a very poverty-stricken area. There's a lot of crime. So I would often see these things happening around me. And so I thought the world was crime every day, watch your back, all this stuff. And so I wanted to write a story about that. And then as it came along, I just switched the genders of the characters, because I always want to write female characters as if their femininity isn't the point of it. So they can just be regular people. And then maybe they happen to be a girl. I don't know if that's the good way to approach something, but I gave it a shot. And that's pretty much my inspiration. It's just my life. And then I would also say hip hop. I wanted to do like a hip hop concept album, like maybe Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Bad City. I wanted to see what would mine be, but in book form.
Very cool.
Cool.
So, what are your plans for the future?
I'm still continuing writing as much as I can. I have a new novel that I'm working on. It might be a novel, I don't know at this point, but it's called Oblivion's Kiss, and it's an interesting take on culture and people while also being fantasy, because Brothers of Blood was my only story to ever actually be based somewhat in the real world. So I'm very interested in getting back to fantasy and getting back to having set rules that aren't ascertained to the real world. So as of right now, I have no idea. I'm just playing it by ear, see how Brothers of Blood does, and hopefully a new book will be coming out soon.
Sounds like a plan. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you, Tristan, for having our brief interview with us. What we're going to have now is a commercial break to Amazon. And we'll be right back with the film trailer, and we'll be discussing the film, The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, based on Charles G. Finney, The Circus of Dr. Lo. Be right back.
Amazon is here to make your life easier. By just the tap of a button, you can turn the camera on your phone to your own personal shopping list. Introducing Flow. Just tap the camera icon under the search bar, and you can find whatever it is you're looking for, right on Amazon. Faster than scanning a barcode and typing the name of your item into the search engine. Besides, searching with words is so 2012. Save time and money. Amazon, where shopping meets effortless.
What is the eerie secret behind the seven faces of Dr. Lao? Do they come from another world, or are they just one mysterious being? When more unusual pictures are made, you may be sure George Powell will make them. His War of the Worlds, Time Machine, and Destination Moon are now joined by the strange and fascinating adventures of Dr. Lao and his amazing companions.
You wish your future told?
How do you do? The name is Merlin. I am the greatest magician the world has ever known.
Hi there. Do I look familiar to you?
What in the world is a Medusa?
A Medusa, dear heart, is a creature with snakes on her head. And if you look at her face, you turn to stone.
I'll show her!
What kind of Oriental hocus pocus is going on around here?
I, sir, am a major mystery.
Out of nowhere he came. A mysterious stranger. And for those he opposed or defended, life was never again the same.
This town ain't big enough for you and me, partner.
A magician, surely, but one who made his magic with such things as love's young dream and the fun in a little boy's heart. Here truly is entertainment for all ages.
I was born in the year 1204.
I am 7,322 years old.
I'm 8 going on 9.
Here is the mysterious beauty of the Far East and the roaring action of the Far West. The thrill spectacle of the city that never was. And the most fabulous fish story in history.
A genuine bona fide sea serpent. In the water, he is small, insignificant, petite. But out of the water, and he doubles his size every 10 seconds until he reaches his full growth.
Just imagine a sea monster who can't stand the water. How about that?
Oh, I got him! Oh, I got him! Oh.
That's showbiz!
Thank you.
Welcome welcome back. Now we're going to be discussing The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, which was directed by George Pell. Now, George Pell and Ray Harryhausen share a similar bond where they do stop-motion animation. Ray Harryhausen seemed to find a lot of fame with it. George Pell found additional fame, but he became more of the lesser known. Most of George Pell's films include War of the Worlds, When Worlds Collide, Houdini, Tom Thumb, The Time Machine, Atlantis, The Lost Continent, The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm, and Doc Savage, The Man in Bronze was his last film, but he was also a multi-Academy Award winner before he did The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, through the films that we just mentioned, and through his Puppet Toon collection, which basically was far more advanced than the Disney and Warner Brother cartoons that we knew, and he used a lot of stop-motion animation. George Pell also gave birth to Gumby and Pokey, which became regular fixtures on television in its infancies in the 1960s and early 70s.
Of course, I remember those, Gumby and Pokey.
Gumby and Pokey.
It's sad when I can start thinking of things in decades.
Now, another thing to note about The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, that the script was written by Charles Beaumont. Now, Charles Beaumont may not seem like a name that strictly comes to your mind nowadays, but Charles Beaumont was the Emmy Award winner who wrote most of the Twilight Zone episodes. Another thing that Charles Beaumont was also known for was a slew of movies. Now, unfortunately, Charles Beaumont died from Pick's disease at the age of 40. Oh. But before that time period, he wrote numerous films, and which also included... Here we go. Sorry. But he also wrote tons of short stories, were terribly published. He had a musical called Weird Romance, which was based on two of his Twilight Zone stories that won awards, which became an off-Broadway hit. And the music was written by Alan Menken, who also did Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and so on and so forth. But his films, which he'll always be remembered for, is, of course, The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao. But he also did The Mask of the Red Death with Vincent Price, Brain Dead, and he also did The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm and Premarital Burial. So, to start off our conversation about The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, Vicky, let's give us our thoughts about what you thought of the film.
The film, it was very entertaining. I hadn't seen it before, and it was. I loved the characters, and I found a lot of it very comical, especially how I believe was it Tony Randall that played him.
Yes.
So it was Tony Randall. I thought I got such a kick out of it when he would act like a typical, stereotype Chinese man. Then all of a sudden he would just switch gears and he would start speaking like a vastly intelligent, worldly human being. I love the characters were a real hoot. You have to watch it to really appreciate the conversation. The fortune teller, that wouldn't shield people from their unhappy truths, and they wouldn't, it was like a mirror image of all these characters, what was wrong with them. And it really wasn't what was wrong with the people in the circus or the things or the animals or the exhibits or whatever you want to call them, but the people. And I think that mirrored what their mentality was when they would interact with these magical creatures.
And what about yourself, Tristan? What did you think about the film?
Well, after reading the book, and I'm anything if not a procrastinator, I just watched the movie this morning for the first time, and I wanted to be fresh. So the book, it has a real fresh. The book is mainly in small, free-flowing vignettes, so I was a little interested and confused to see how it was going to be translated onto the screen, but the fact that they actually brought a moral center into the story about losing the town, and they emphasized whatever was in the book that had to be about those instances. So the more and more as I was watching it, I had the same instincts through the book. I was like, oh, this is going to be crazy. It's going to be really racist, blah, blah, blah. And as it went on, I don't know. I fell into the character of Dr. Lo. I loved him. I liked how he played him and all the other characters that he played throughout. I did think that the main newspaper man was a little rapey at the beginning. That's the only thing I was a little like, oh, wow. Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? But otherwise, I really enjoyed the film.
It was funny. I thought it was really comical mostly.
Yeah, I was cracking up way more than I thought I would.
And what about yourself, John?
First off, Barbara Eden was on point with her
Oh my
character.
God,
Like,
I
literally,
loved her.
Yeah.
I the first time when she's like changing and she's like it getting all done up and like, oh, and then the fact that she's just sort of, oh, I'm not going to get remarried again. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was her husband's mom was like, no, you need to like find another man. And I was like, well, good for you. Because you're like, you know, I'm assuming her son died or whatever, but it's like, you know, you need to get out and get a man. And she's like, no, I don't need a man. I got my son. I got you. He's got 2 moms. But yeah.
She's such a bombshell back then too to play that part.
Yeah. And then
I just placed her better.
I was just also like in awe of the makeup artistry of William Tell. Because back then is like was not easy to do and have it come across as not looking hokey, and it never looked hokey. Some of the effects obviously look hokey now, but I mean I can't imagine of that time how people were like, oh wow, you know, like, you know, when he sets the little machine off and it goes and it starts raining, like that was very like psychedelic fireworks.
I love that so much.
Yeah, that was such a great.
I felt bad for Merlin.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Merlin
just like, talk about a tough
Merlin looked
fucking
just
audience.
tired. He's like, here's another magic trick. Whoa.
Then he's trying to explain they're not tricks. They're not tricks.
Yeah.
I think what sets this film apart is also that it's not filled with Hollywood stars. It's filled with character actors. Tony Randall is not a huge Hollywood star. He was a character actor. Barbara Eden, before I Dream of Jeannie, was a character actress.
Right.
Yeah.
But every little small part, even is filled with like someone fantastic. I mean, one of my favorite characters is Minerva Erskine, who played the shrewish woman who turned into a stone.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is like, and I've seen this movie so many times. I watch this film probably twice a year, and I'm a religious fanatic when it comes to this film. But the more you watch it, if you just look at the people in the background and just watch their expressions, and Minerva Erskine's face through the whole thing is so phenomenal, you know, because she has a stone face, that weathered looking. I mean, her head's way too big for her body, but she just, but she's just phenomenal. And you know, a couple things I've read about the Seven Faces of Dr. Lao is that the 2 henchmen that they used, which is Royal Dano, which his last film was House 2, and
Sam and Cassie.
Yeah, and John Dubisset. Now the thing is about those 2, which is quite weird, is that they would later be the protagonists or the ideal. Their characters from this movie were used for Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like the Ant Mob bunch and the Hair Bear bunch.
Oh.
They used these 2 as the prototypes for those characters.
Well, it makes sense because there was 3 henchmen that were together, and they themselves look like it was like the Three Stooges, right? Because you had one who had this bright curly red hair, and then you had the you know that like really stupid one, you know, the one that you had the one that's smart and kind of cunning, then the other one's like, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about, you know, like.
The book though kind of only followed the movie in a more vague way though. Because it didn't really get into the meat of the book. But I liked the movie, but I mean, it was still fantastic. But
I think
you couldn't possibly do that, I don't think, with a movie with the rating.
As Tristan was saying, they had to put a moral spin on it to actually tie everything together. Otherwise, you have something that's very episodic, and it wouldn't actually flow through it as. But if you notice, then in repeat viewing, you will notice this. Now, the thing is, the movie was made by MGM, and in the background, you will see a lot of the fixtures and set decorations from The Wizard of Oz. You know,
I thought some of that stuff looked familiar. I didn't think that, but I was okay. Because I remember, whoever watched that Over the Rainbow with the midgets and stuff, and because they couldn't control the midgets with Wizard of Oz, and they were just screwing with the sets and partying and having a good time. I don't know why that's popped into my head. I mean,
a lot of the mystical characters are missing in basic movement form, but if you look,
snake.
But if you look behind them, the 2-headed turtle, he's there.
Oh, funny.
The Chimera is there. They're like in pictures and stuff like this in the background. There'll be a statue of them, and they kept all the characters in the movie. Just that, you know. But
I mean, you could always say that they're in different tents, right? Because you could say each one. Yeah, that's so smart. Wow.
So they were able to keep all the characters there, and the thing is that after I read that, and I watched the movie last night, so I'd have a fresher, not as fresh as Tristan's view of the film, but fresh.
Right.
And because I read about this, I was like looking in the background for everything. And I said before, because I've seen the movie so many times, like, you know, I can recite it almost line for line, and I was reciting some of it line for line. And
you know what it reminded me of, because it, like, especially towards the end, it for some reason reminds me of Mary Poppins, because he kind of just, you know, he comes into town and basically saves the town and then like gets back on his mule or donkey and rides away, you know. So there's this moment where I was like, oh my God, is he going to start singing, you know?
He just disappears.
Oh, the sugar makes the medicine go down.
I know. Well, he does. He just goes away and he just goes poof, you know?
Yeah.
Then there's the issue with the snake. It was that Arthur O'Connell played the bad guy who wanted to make everybody sell their land.
Yeah, Stark.
Snake, and it started looking like him.
Yeah, Stark. Yeah.
The snake had that mustache. That was creepy. I loved it.
I know, that was a little like, yeah, weird. I mean, that to me, it was like funny and weird, you know. That was really cool.
But they also said, I mean, but it was kind of funny. It wasn't in the book that also when it came to about the snake, that the snake, when you looked at the snake, he would take on your features and he would be the mirror of you.
Yeah.
And so I thought they did that very clever. I mean, it would have been, I kind of wondered sometimes in the movie if they like other characters and if we change his face to look like other characters. Oh, yeah. See that? I mean,
he didn't have a really sustainable cage, though. If you notice in the movie, he could have got out if he wanted to. He could have swallowed anyway if he wanted to.
It's funny you say that, because I was like, why can't he leave? The cage is a little thorny, so is he afraid he's going to get like punctured or something? But
I know he could have got out. I mean, but it really wasn't much of a cage.
And I love how, like, when he's being sort of brought in with the cage into the main ring, and the Stark looks at him like, basically, if he could flip him off, he'd flip him off, and then he's like, oh wait, I can't, I gotta be composed, you know.
Yeah. The sea serpent, oh my God.
Yeah,
that was really cool. I love the effect for that.
Fishbowl.
Yeah. That was Gumby.
That was Gumby.
The writing of this film is very so well done, because some of the scenes in there, like when you see, you know, the woman that we talked about earlier, you know, the what's her name?
One that gets frozen?
No, not the one that gets frozen, but the one who's basically, you know, the town. Well, I always thought of her, she's probably like the town tramp at one time, but she's just now pathetic. The one who gets her fortune told.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when Apollonius,
that's gonna drive me nuts. I gotta find it.
But when Apollonius goes through and like tells her what the future holds for her, and I mean, every time I see that, it's like it just makes you kind of, you know, it's so true. You know, it's like all your life is now, and then when you pass, basically you're just gonna be forgotten about unless you leave something behind.
Yeah.
And it's pretty. I mean, you think that's pretty much everyone. I guess nowadays, I mean, I know a lot of people are looking for fame, but then again, because there's so much fame out there now as far as reality, that, you know, in time, like who's going to remember anyone that's on, you know, The Only Way Is Essex or the Jersey Shore lot? I mean, already you're starting to forget who these people are. I mean, you know, you remember who Snooki is, and you can remember the situation. Snooki. Well, what about the other three?
Jay, was it Jay something?
Right.
Not J Lo.
But then that's why you bring them back for another.
That was a train wreck. My daughter made me watch that. That whole show was a freaking train wreck. It was funny though, because people knew who Snooki was, and they couldn't even tell you who the president of the United States was at that time.
Yeah.
So
I think what's interesting about the book too is that the book versus the movie is that the book actually it kind of comes to an end, but the movie comes to a point to where I could see this being a sequel, because what if he went to another town and it's a different, like, it's almost like he's moving on to actually help people and get them to like wake up, you know, versus the book. I mean, plus I wouldn't know how MGM would do a virgin sacrifice at the end of the movie, but
I would like to see it.
But
I would have wanted to watch. Try to find a virgin in 2018.
And it's sad, the little boy at the end where he's just like juggling. Look, I can juggle.
I know that poor boy. He really wanted to go.
I mean, his life at home must have sucked, because he's just like, please take me away.
I know. Poor kid. He wanted to leave. His home life did suck. It looked quite apparent.
But I even like when the snake's talking to Snark and he goes, you know, and like you have that thing where like humans think they're the most advanced creatures, and he's like, well, look at you, my creature made me perfect. My creature made me, you know, my God made me this and this, and I'm far superior than you. And look at you, you know, you're so feeble, you have to hang rags to protect your skin. Yeah. It's like those kind of things that you kind of watch it, and every time I watch it, it's like I just pick up more and more from everything that's being said.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not, you know, because normally, like, I mean, let's face it, when this movie came out, it probably was known as like a special effects treat, you know, the way that we would look at The Day After Tomorrow, Today, and all these other you know, great big special effects movies. And as you know, that with big special effects movies, there's very little message in any of these kind of things, and the lines are secondary to special effects. But here, they really made sure that the script was just as important as special effects, which I quite like about this film.
Yeah. I mean,
they did do rather well with it. They did, even for the time.
Marjorie, who is that woman who gets like zapped by Medusa? Good Lord, man, she was so
she needed to be zapped by Medusa.
She was so mean. Like the husband's trying to be nicer. Give me the paper. You know, like rips. I'm like, gee.
Did she call Medusa a hussy? She called her a hussy.
Yeah, she called her a hussy. Yeah.
And then she turned her to stone. But she changed when he got her back, though. She wasn't near the asshole she was before. So at least somebody.
Her body language completely switched. It was crazy. Yeah. And she played that really well.
Well, then you have also Merlin who like saves her, and he's like, "Look what I did," and no one noticed. He's like, "Oh well."
Yeah, there was nothing that guy could do. He's pretty much, I ain't got nothing.
But even like when you think about the makeup for him, I mean, for Merlin, I mean, they even put liver spots on Tony Randall's hands to play Merlin. I mean, even the smallest details.
He did such an excellent job doing all those different characters. He just did fantastic.
And when Barbara Eden gets turned on by Pan.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
He's
sweating. He stays around, and then he becomes the newspaper guy.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so cleverly done. And then, of course, when the crowd comes in, he goes back to being Tony Randall again.
Yeah.
Though I did say that when he became the newspaper man, he did look a bit like Will Ferrell.
So, oh, yeah.
Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Oh, you would think something like that.
She like clutched her pearls, like, oh wait, who are you?
But I think, another interesting fact from comparing the book to the film is that the book is actually based in a more modern time. The film, they took it back. I think they dropped 40 years off the film. I think they made
by what the characters had on, it almost looked like early 1900s by the fashion.
Yeah. Yeah, like very Partridge, you know.
Well, in the book, they had cars, you know, and that kind of thing. And here, they're back to horse and carriage.
Yeah. Right.
You know? And I mean, I know that Stark had a car, but he was rich. And then I'm not sure about that motorized bike, if they would have that in that time period. I know that's quite cool.
Well, he was also very a tech gadgety kind of guy, too, because of the machine. He obviously found these hidden gems, but also like technology that they didn't have in that town either. Mm-hmm. Like the Rainmaker, you know.
But I think overall, I think they did a very good job of capturing the spirit of the book. But I could just imagine if they did a word for word, you know, translation, I don't think we'd have a movie the way it is today.
It has to be a television show. Like, I don't think they can turn that into a film.
No.
There's too much. It's too in depth of a book. I mean,
it has to be an anthology.
Oh, the mythology of it all, and I mean, you have gods, you have the witches, you had, you know, just about every possible, plausible, mystical being in the book. I mean, you got them all. I mean, I don't know how you put that into an hour and a half film.
By the way, I would love to see that visually. I mean, even, you know, this.
Absolutely.
What was it was like the dog that was made of all of the stuff like that. That was really cool. And then how it was like birthed out of, you know, rubble, basically.
I'm kind of wondering.
Could you imagine if they did a show that was like that? They could actually focus on particular instances of the 2 days or so of the circus, and it could be like 8 episodes long, and they could really get in depth with it and follow the book and branch off in a different path that don't have to be satisfying to an audience for an hour and a half. They could just take an hour. And you can do it. It would sell. I think
it would also be if the patron is is communicating with the creature and having that connection, and maybe their story runs in parallel with whatever, how they got captured or how they became part of the circus. Like, you can definitely create really strong episodes, even if it's 6 episodes. That would be a strong series.
It would. I would love to see it, like a made-for-TV thing like that. I would definitely watch it. That would be.
Well, I think there's a possibility. I mean, American Gods, if you read the book and then watch the miniseries.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a very episodic. The book is. It's it's different from the Circus of Dr. Lao, but it is very episodic, and you have like all these gods coming in there. They only have like maybe a chapter, and then off they go. But the TV series is able to bring it all together and being able to flush out a lot of the stuff that you're not able to flush out in the book. So they would be able to
explore backstory.
Yeah, and make it more interesting, sort of thing. But my hats go off to Tony Randall.
He did a fantastic job.
It's amazing.
Yeah, he did great. I thought I was going to hate him. He did fantastic. So.
They were trying to cast Peter Sellers for the role, but they didn't think that Peter Sellers was famous enough to do it.
Oh, interesting. That would have been really an interesting take.
Yeah,
I love Peter Sellers. Oh my God. They said he was considered seriously for multiple roles, but was not yet considered a big enough star.
I mean, I like Peter Sellers, but I after watching it with Tony Randall, I don't think anyone. The thing about Peter Sellers is Peter Sellers is always very mannered. He's very good, but he's always very mannered. Where Tony Randall just let it go. It's like, I'm just going to do this. And even when he played Medusa, I mean, and there's no point in there that you actually realize this Tony Randall. I mean, they even tell you in the beginning of the movie, Tony Randall plays all these parts, and you're watching the film, you still don't see Tony Randall in any of these parts. And even when he's playing Dr. Lowe, he's basically, I mean, he's changing his accents all the time. I mean, he's, like when he's discussing about the sea serpent, he goes into a Scottish accent. When he's discussing something else. And at some point, I mean.
Well, who do y'all think that you'd pick, like, future casting? If you had to pick an actor for Dr. Lowe or Dr. Lau now, who would you choose? Who do you think would be able to pull that off?
That would be hard.
Very hard.
Right? It would have to be someone who's really good at improv, like really good at improv, because you have to be able to kind of just flip on a dime. Even like Keith was saying, even with Dr. Lowe, at one point when he's switching between the accents, you notice it, but then one of the characters goes, "Wait a minute, you're speaking. Why are you speaking like that?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about," and he goes right back, and it's hysterical,
I think nowadays you probably would have a bit of difficulty, which you probably would have to. Use an Asian actor. I'm not sure what you actually use, like Johnny Depp playing an Asian, or I mean, they had bad enough time when Jonathan Pryce wanted to do it for Miss Saigon 30 years ago.
Oh, you know who would be interesting? I mean, he's still really fairly young, but the one that is in, he's in Harry Potter right now, but he's very androgynous, so he could flip between male and female, like especially Medusa and stuff. He could play that, but he's let me pull his name. I'm trying to think of his
name. Jim Carrey could probably pull it off.
Yeah,
Jim Carrey could. Yeah, but now he's insane. So
he does everything. That guy can do anything with his face and his contorts. When I remember when he first came out on HBO so long ago.
I mean, the only problem is that if they ever decide to remake this, unfortunately, it'd probably be Tim Burton was starring Johnny Bloody Depp, which is with Helena Bonham Carter somewhere stuck in there just for good measure.
Ezra Miller, that's what his name is. I couldn't remember his name.
Oh yeah, he's also in.
He's playing The Flash.
Yeah. So he's got a very androgynous look, but like he could, play between the characters and have. Because again, if you're now, makeup artistry can make you look, 6 in CGI can make you like, 70 when you're 20,
Yeah. Oh, they got all the computer technology behind it now. I mean, they could do so much with it. I mean, the original was fantastic, though. Hard to beat.
Yeah, I think it's a thing of its time, but at the same time, there is a feeling of timelessness about it. It's like you kind of watch it and that it's an older film, sort of thing, but there's still something very timeless about it. Even the lessons learned. I mean, that speech that Dr. Lowe gives to Mike, the young boy, about the whole world as a circus.
Yeah.
Look at it. And I don't know, every time I go
Well, doesn't the little boy say, "I don't understand," and then he's like, "Me neither," and he starts dancing and doing all this stuff. Fantastic.
But they even come back to that theme again where they repeat it before the final credits. And you're kind of left with this melancholy, like, feel-good movie that you kind of watch it and you're enjoyed by it, but at the same time, I think you learn some valuable lessons while watching it, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also the ending is, where, Stark was such a corrupt guy. He owns up. He's like, well, actually, yeah, there's a railroad coming through and your guys are going to make money. So, I'm going to do the right thing. And you guys, so he kind of fessed up. He could have been the bitter, jaded villain and walked away. So even he changed, so Hollywood ending.
I thought it was quite interesting though, because they had that one scene where Stark meets Apollonius. Apollonius goes, yes, he tells him that he's going to be richer beyond, his ever means. And so before the big, reveal about what's, about the town and stuff like this and for the vote, he's thinking that he's won. And then afterwards, it's like, and then I think at the end, he actually realizes that, okay, it wasn't about money at all. It was about your relationships and within your town and your community and all this other stuff. And then he realized he was very, very rich. Yeah. So actually, everything that Apollonius said actually did come true, but not really he thought they were going to come true.
He won because he won that being rich was being rich with your community. And I think that's what that whole, when he sees the past and how the town was destroyed, the people were happy, before this other person came in and basically turned them against each other and turned them against their God. So that was another big, huge, like very religious, like you were mentioning, Vicky, pagan, like don't piss off the gods.
Moral turpitude. All my friends are pagans. That's why that was funny. We're always talking about sacrificing babies under the full moon. So, or at least we get accused of it.
Well, I got some people you can sacrifice if you ever want their names.
I got a list. It's long.
You're like, do they need to be a virgin?
I can't find a virgin. That's the damnedest thing of it all.
Do they have to be sexually a virgin or just, I know a lot of people who mentally are just virgins because they're stupid. Does that help?
Yeah, what about born again?
Virgin.
Born again, okay.
Born again virgin.
Yeah, but some shit just don't grow back. I know.
But I think, overall, I think, to give our final thoughts about the Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, we'll start with Tristan. What are your final thoughts of the Seven Faces of Dr. Lao?
I would say about the Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, if you want to watch a film with characters that have multiple shades, this one is definitely the one that has that. It has beautiful charm when it comes to the special effects. I enjoyed them. But with the characters, I saw the villain, Mr. Stark. I automatically assumed, he's going to trip over, fall in the mud at the end, or he's going to have his pants blown up by dynamite. He just seems to be this two-dimensional villain. But then towards the end, he's frustrated with himself. He's not able to discover what he truly wants, even though he knows he had a past where he was morally dignified. And even though they wrap it up rather quickly at the end of the movie with his character arc, I just found that to be more satisfying than a bad guy tries to kill a town, then he's run off out of town. Yeah. If you want to watch a movie with dimension, this is definitely the one.
And we like Child Victoria. What are your final thoughts?
I thought it was a fantastic movie. I thought Tony Randall was a fantastic addition to it. I think anybody should watch it and also read the book. The fantasy of the time, and just how the people, have to deal with their realities, and I just love fantasy, and I didn't realize how big this was back then, and it was just a very well done movie, and for its time, and like we're talking about a redo on it or something. There's so much in the book that could be done too. I mean, it could be just a fantastic, mini series if they could do it actually. But it was a great movie. I suggest it to anybody.
And what about yourself, John?
I really appreciated both the book and the movie. I think it's hard to sometimes have something translate from a book to a film, and I think each of them in their own entirety is a good pieces. And I suggest people to watch a movie because it is a fun adventure. It's very it keeps you wanting to know more about the characters, and it's satisfying in some ways, but you want, like, when it ends, I kind of was like, okay, when's the next one? Because again, he leaves and he's going to go somewhere else and do some good. And Dr. Lowe is the type of person you want to come into town and like fix things and like help people, because he, throughout the entire movie, when someone was just being mean or cruel, he'd be like, I'm going to mess with you now. And so, and the book, again, reminds me so much of Homer, and I'm a huge Homer fan. So, please.
It does really reflect the Aeneid and the Odyssey. And those are like some of my favorite books. I've read them cover to cover 1,000,000 times.
Me too.
And personally, this has been my favorite film probably since the age of 4 onwards. And it's never going to change. I'm always going to be stuck to it. I'm still going to be bringing it out. My only quarrels with the film is I wish MGM would release a Blu-ray version of it with some nice special additions and features, but that has yet to come. Though, for all you George Pell fans out there, Puppetoons is now released on Blu-ray with a special two-disc Blu-ray available through Amazon. Always got to plug Amazon there. But if you want to look at more George Pell stuff, this Puppetoon collection is bloody fantastic. It will blow your mind. So if you get a chance to see that. But the book, going back to Dr. Lowe, I think the book works on so many levels, and I think the film is a fantastic film, and I think there are 2 fantastic companion pieces to each other. And I think that some of the most important stuff that's in the book also gets translated into film. Some of the lessons are in there, and I think that nowadays, I think they would look at that kind of a book and say it was unfilmable, and I don't think you would ever get anything made like that. But I'm glad that, they had the team put together to make a phenomenal film, and I'm glad that we have it. So
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a fun film.
So, John, do you want to help close out our Literary License podcast episode of The Circus of Dr. Lowe and the 7 Faces of Dr. Lowe?
Oh, good. It's John.
Yes. A special thank you to our guest, Tristan Drew Rogers, for joining us. You can head on over to his website at tristandrewwordpress.com. And while you're on the interweb, you can head on over to our website as well at llpodcast.com to find all of our social and podcast platforms, as well as check out past episodes, become a patron, and read our reviews of books to screens and everything in between. Make sure to tune in next month where we will be covering the movie Clue.
Yay!
To coin Dr. Lowe, we searched a world both high and low to capture the best material for the show. A youth may come and age may go, but no more podcast is like this show. Thank you, guys.
Ooh, bam!
Thank you.
Bang!
Bye, guys.
See you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Let me tell you something. The whole world is a circus, if you know how to look at it. The way the sun goes down when you're tired, comes up when you want to be on the move. That's real magic. The way a leaf grows, the song of the birds, the way the desert looks at night, with the moon embracing it. Oh, my boy, that's circus enough for anyone. Every time you watch a rainbow and feel wonder in your heart, every time you pick up a handful of dust and see not the dust, but a mystery, a marvel there in your hand. Every time you stop and think, I'm alive, and being alive is fantastic. Every time such a thing happens, you're part of the circus of Dr. Lowe.
When I feel alone inside my head, staring out the window from my bed, there's a voice inside that's learned to rise whenever I feel down. Put my raincoat on, walk in the sun, feel the light of the world and everyone. For the simple truth still shines like a lighthouse in the dark. and small. Everything is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. Every once in a while I fall apart, barefoot in the shards of my broken heart, till I wake up and I realize tomorrow's gonna come. I've learned to embrace the darkest day, let the rain clouds cry and fade away, till I'm rising in the sun, like a phoenix in the dawn. Underneath it all, everything is beautiful. All things great and small, everything is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. Love is a circle that we give to get and get what we give. Life is a struggle that we face to make a life worth living. Every once in a while I fall apart, barefoot in the shards of my broken heart, till I wake up and I realize underneath it all, everything is beautiful. All things great and small, everything is beautiful. Everything is beautiful.